Quillen cursed under his breath, the sound barely audible over the ceaseless hum of the Euphrasia's life support systems. The dam station always sounded like it was one labored breath away from a complete systems failure, which was as comforting as a grenade in a daycare. Still, it was home, and better than getting fried on Jupiter's surface. "Quillen, wake up," Captain Ree's voice crackled over the intercom, sharper than a disgruntled ex at a court hearing. "I'm awake," he grumbled, dragging himself from the depths of an engineering manual that was only slightly more thrilling than watching paint dry. "What's on fire now?" "It's not a fire," Ree retorted. "We've got something better. An alien artifact found on Jupiter's surface." Quillen sat up straighter, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Alien, huh? Let me guess. Looks like a toaster and it's full of killer space germs. We'll find out soon enough," Ree replied dryly. "Get your toolkit and meet us in the analysis bay. And Quillen, try not to blow us up." Yeah, no promises," he muttered to the empty room, stuffing the manual under a pile of loose schematics before heading out. The corridors of Euphrasia were as inviting as a haunted house tour, with flickering lights and questionable stains that no one dared to investigate further. Maintenance was always a game of Russian roulette. Touch the wrong panel, and you might release a swarm of mechanical spiders or something equally unpleasant. He arrived at the analysis bay just as Ree and Astrax, the station's resident linguist, were convening around a holographic display. Captain Ree, all sharp angles and serious frowns, looked like she was permanently planning a coup. Astrax, on the other hand, had the kind of enthusiasm that made you want to punch him or buy him a drink in equal measure. "Astrax, you solved the alien Sudoku yet?" Quillen asked, nodding at the floating symbols that danced across the display. Astrax grinned, a flash of teeth that promised mischief or madness, depending on which side of the bed he'd rolled out of. "Not yet, but give me 5 minutes and a strong coffee. You want an Roman 4 drip with that," Quillen quipped, eyeing the pulsating core of the artifact. It looked like a cross between a lava lamp and a heart attack. "So, what's the story here, Ree?" Captain Ree crossed her arms, her gaze like a laser cutter boring holes into the artifact's hologram. "Survey team picked this up just before their instruments went haywire. Could be worth a fortune, or it might just be a tricked-out paperweight. But the symbols that make no damn sense," Astrax interjected, his fingers twitching as if itching to unravel the mystery or possibly pet it like a small, dangerous animal. "Sounds like my last relationship," Quillen said, moving to the console to bring up a closer view of the artifact. "So, what's the plan?" "We poke it until something interesting happens," Ree replied dryly, "and try not to get ourselves killed in the process." "Solid strategy," Quillen deadpanned. His fingers danced over the controls, running a series of diagnostics that made as much sense as a politician's apology. The readings were off the charts, a symphony of chaos that suggested the artifact was either a key to the universe or a cosmic joke. Astrax leaned in closer, his eyes wide with the kind of excitement that belied a serious lack of self-preservation. "Maybe it's a form of communication, a greeting or a warning, or an intergalactic pizza order," Quillen suggested. "Extra cheese and a side of annihilation." "Keep it up, Quillen, and I might just lock you in here with it," Ree warned, though her lips twitched with the ghost of a smile. Quillen smirked, but his attention was already back on the display. "All right, let's try not to piss off any alien overlords today. Astrax, any progress on those symbols?" The linguist shrugged, a movement that conveyed both impatience and intrigue. "Some of it looks familiar, but it's like trying to read a book with half the pages missing." "Figures," Quillen said. "Sounds like my luck." Ree glanced at the chronometer on her wrist, a relic from a time when people actually needed to know what day it was. "Let's get a team down to the surface. We need a closer look." "Count me out," Quillen said quickly. "I've got enough problems up here without adding radiation burns to the list." Astrax chuckled. "Don't worry, I'll bring you back a rock." "Bring me back a paycheck instead," Quillen replied, running another scan. "This thing's giving off more energy than a teenage rave." And about as safe, Ree added. All right, you two keep working on this. I'll get a team prepped for descent. And Quillen, yeah, Cap, don't blow up the station while I'm gone, she said. I'd hate to have to crash on your couch. Quillen watched her leave, shaking his head. She's got a way with words, doesn't she? Astrax grinned. Better than your way with machines, I hope. Touché, Quillen admitted, turning back to their puzzling cosmic conundrum. The symbols flickered, mocking him with their complexity, a riddle wrapped in an enigma wrapped in a middle finger. You ever think we're just ants poking at a supernova with a stick? Astrax mused, leaning back in his chair. Constantly, Quillen replied. But hey, at least it keeps us busy, right? The hologram shimmered, casting ghostly reflections across their faces as they worked in silence, the weight of the unknown pressing down like a lead blanket. Somewhere, deep within the artifact, something pulsed with an insistent alien rhythm, as if daring them to come closer. You think it's alive? Astrax asked suddenly, breaking the quiet. Quillen considered the question, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. If it is, let's hope it's in a good mood. Astrax laughed, a sound that echoed in the chamber like a promise or a threat. Cheers to that, my friend. Cheers to that. Hours passed in a blur of speculation and caffeine-fueled theorizing. They ping-ponged ideas back and forth, like a game of intellectual tennis with no net and plenty of foul balls. Quillen's mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle with the same finesse he applied to fixing the station's temperamental plumbing. You know, Astrax said, peering at the symbols, sometimes I think the universe is just one big cosmic joke. If it is, Quillen replied, the punchline's overdue. Their banter was interrupted by a sudden blaring alarm, the kind that usually preluded a very bad day. Quillen swore, his fingers flying over the console as he tried to pinpoint the issue. What now? Astrax demanded, already on his feet, eyes scanning the displays. Looks like a system malfunction, Quillen replied through gritted teeth. Or the artifacts decided to throw a tantrum. The room trembled, a low rumble that reverberated through the station like the growl of a very hungry predator. Quillen on me, Astrax said, moving toward the door. Let's check the auxiliary systems. Quillen followed, heart thudding in his chest like a bass drum. Great, more things to fix, just what I needed. They hurried through the dimly lit corridors, the alarms wailed dogging their steps. Euphrasia's metal bones groaned, a reminder of how close to the edge they always lived. Quillen could feel the station's fragility in every shudder, every creak, as if the whole thing might just decide it was tired of their nonsense and pack it in. You ever feel like we're just duct tape and hope holding this place together? Quillen asked as they reached the auxiliary control room. Every damn day, Astrax replied, punching in a code that opened the door with a reluctant hiss. Inside, the controls flickered like a nervous tick, shadows playing across their faces as they assessed the situation. Okay, Quillen said, taking a deep breath. Let's see what's trying to kill us this time. They worked in grim silence, the camaraderie of shared peril binding them as surely as any oath. The artifact's mysterious energy pulsed, an inescapable reminder of its presence, its potential to upend everything they thought they knew. Whatever this thing is, Astrax said, glancing at Quillen, I hope it's worth it. It better be, Quillen replied. Otherwise, I want a refund on my life choices. Astrax laughed quietly, a sound that mingled with the alarms and the station's restless hum. They worked together, two cogs in a wheel spinning ever faster toward the unknown. And as the artifact's pulse continued, a silent rhythm echoing through the station's halls, Quillen couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming, something that would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The universe, after all, had a way of keeping its secrets, and Euphrasia was about to learn just how deep the rabbit hole went. But for now, they had a job to do, and as long as they kept moving, kept pushing back against the chaos, there was hope, even if it was only the kind of hope that came with a side of cynicism and a dash of gallows humor. Hey, Quillen, Astrax said suddenly, his eyes flicking up from the console. Yeah, look on the bright side, Astrax continued, his grin irrepressible. At least it's never boring, Quillen chuckled, a sound that was equal parts exasperation and agreement. True, boring would kill us faster. And with that they returned to their work, driven by the inexorable pull of curiosity and the stubborn refusal to let the universe have the last laugh. Not today, at least. Not if they had anything to say about it. Quillen tapped the console, his fingers dancing over the keys like a pianist performing a sonnet for the tone-deaf. The artifact's pulse, a rhythmic drumbeat of potential catastrophe, echoed through Euphrasia like a countdown to the universe's worst prank. "You know," Astrax said, peering over Quillen's shoulder, "if this thing blows, I'm blaming you, me." "I'm just the guy pressing buttons," Quillen replied, eyes glued to the erratic data streams. "You're the one decoding alien hieroglyphics like they are ancient Tinder profiles. Just saying. Touching things never ends well for you, true, but it beats boredom. Boredom's lethal out here." The holographic display flickered, an epileptic light show that suggested even the artifact was unsure why it was here. Quillen leaned back, his chair creaking under the weight of exhaustion and barely managed optimism. "All right, let's try something different," he muttered, entering another sequence. The console hummed, a sound that was neither reassuring nor particularly safe. And then, of course, everything went to hell. The artifact pulsed violently, a burst of energy that sent the station's systems into a frenzy. Alarms blared, a cacophony of chaos that made Quillen wince. The lights strobed, casting wild shadows that danced across their faces like deranged marionettes. "Congratulations," Astrax shouted over the din, "you broke it." "Not just broke it," Quillen said, frantically typing. "I think I turned it on." Was that the plan? Plans are for people who like being disappointed. A sudden jolt threw them both off balance, and Quillen's stomach lurched as the station groaned in protest. The artifact's energy surged, a throbbing heartbeat that suggested it had ideas of its own. "This isn't good," Astrax said, stating the obvious with the clarity of a man who had seen too many bad movies. "No kidding," Quillen replied. "The system's picking up an outgoing signal to where, hell if I know. Somewhere not here." The console displayed a burst of alien code, a digital sneeze that might have been coordinates or a cosmic distress call. Either way, it spelt trouble. "Can you isolate it?" Astrax asked, eyes darting across the screen as if sheer willpower could decipher the gibberish. "Already on it," Quillen said, fingers a blur. "But it's like trying to stop a flood with a bucket, more like a sieve," Astrax added. "So, what do we do ideally? We wait and hope nothing shows up angry, and realistically, we brace for impact." As if on cue, Captain Ree's voice crackled over the comms, a lifeline of authority amidst the chaos. "Quillen, report." "Well, Captain," Quillen said, "you know how they say curiosity killed the cat? Yeah, I think we just killed the cat, the owner, and the whole damn animal shelter," explained. "The artifact's active. It's transmitting something, coordinates maybe. Hard to say. But if I had to guess, I'd say we just rang someone's doorbell." "Great. I'll alert the welcome committee," Ree replied dryly. "Astrax, any idea what we're dealing with?" "Not yet," Astrax admitted, his enthusiasm tempered by the seriousness of their predicament. "But my money's on company." "Let's hope they're friendly," Ree said, "because we're fresh out of party favors." Quillen cut the comms, turning to Astrax with a sardonic smile. "This is going well as a spacewalk without a suit." They braced as another tremor rippled through the station, the artifact's pulse sinking with the station's systems like a parasite with delusions of grandeur. It was a living thing now, its presence felt in every shudder, every flicker of the lights. "What do you think it wants?" Astrax asked, his voice tinged with genuine curiosity. "Beats me. A hot meal and a bed." "World domination, sounds like my last date. Tell me about it," Quillen said, rubbing his temples. The situation was spiraling, each new development a step closer to disaster. "Okay, we need to get ahead of this. Can you decipher any more of those symbols?" Astrax squinted at the holographic display, the alien script a puzzle he was determined to solve. "Give me 10 minutes, take 5. Who knows how long we have before whatever's out there comes knocking." "Pressure's on, then," Astrax said, diving back into his work with the enthusiasm of a man motivated by the threat of impending doom. Quillen watched him, his own mind working overtime to find a solution. The station's systems were holding, but only just. If anything came through that signal, they'd be sitting ducks. "Quillen," Astrax called suddenly, excitement bleeding into his voice. "I think I've got something. Enlighten me," Quillen said, moving to his side. "It's a map, sort of. These symbols, they outline a trajectory. The artifact's sending coordinates somewhere specific. Any idea where? Not exactly, but I'd bet my last credit it's somewhere we don't want visitors from. Optimistic as always, I see. I try." The lights flickered again, the station's groans a reminder of how fragile their situation was. Quillen felt the weight of their predicament settling on his shoulders like a lead cloak. "Ree's going to love this," he muttered. As if summoned by his words, the captain reappeared on the comms. "Quillen, Astrax, get to the command center. We've got incoming." The message hung in the air like a guillotine's shadow. Quillen exchanged a look with Astrax, the moment pregnant with unspoken understanding. "Here we go," Quillen said, standing. Time to meet the neighbors. They made their way through Euphrasia's corridors, the station's heartbeat a constant companion as they moved with purpose. The air was thick with tension, anticipation crackling like electricity in a storm. "Think they'll be friendly?" Astrax asked as they reached the command center. "If they are not, I'll let you do the talking," Quillen replied. "You've got the charm, and you've got the knack for getting us into these situations. Team effort, my friend." Captain Ree stood at the console, her expression a carefully composed mask of determination and barely concealed irritation. The holographic display showed the artifact's signal, a beacon reaching out into the void, its purpose as inscrutable as its creators. "All right, what have we got?" Quillen asked, joining her. "A whole lot of nothing," Ree said, "but something's on its way. Whatever you activated, it's got a response. Great. So what's our plan? Hope for diplomacy, prepare for a fight?" Quillen nodded, his thoughts racing as he considered their options. The artifact was a wild card, an unknown variable in a situation rapidly spiraling out of control. "Any chance we can shut it off?" Ree asked, a hint of desperation threading her voice. Quillen shook his head, not without knowing what it'll do. "Could blow us to pieces or make things worse, so we're stuck pretty much." Fantastic. The tension in the room was palpable, a living thing that wove through the air like smoke. They were on the precipice of something monumental, and the unknown loomed large, casting long shadows over their resolve. "Can we at least track the signal?" Ree asked, gripping the console as another shudder rocked the station. "Working on it," Quillen said, his fingers flying over the keys. "It's like trying to follow a breadcrumb trail left by a drunk pigeon, but I'm getting there. Let's hope it leads to answers, not more questions." As the station trembled again, the seriousness of their situation settled over them like a shroud. They were a small outpost on the edge of known space, an island of humanity adrift in a sea of uncertainty. And somewhere out there, the Syntherians were coming. Quillen glanced at Astrax, who met his gaze with a mixture of determination and grim humor. They were in it together, for better or worse, and whatever came next, they'd face it head-on. "Hey," Quillen said, breaking the heavy silence, "look on the bright side." Astrax raised an eyebrow. "There's a bright side, sure. If we survive this, drinks are on me." Astrax grinned, a flash of optimism amidst the storm. "I'll hold you to that." As they prepared for whatever lay ahead, the artifact's pulse continued, a steady beat that echoed through the station like the ticking of a cosmic clock. Time was running out, and soon they'd find out exactly what their actions had wrought. But for now, they focused on the task at hand, driven by the shared hope that they'd weather the storm and come out the other side intact. And as the universe held its breath, waiting for the inevitable collision of worlds, Quillen couldn't help but think that, no matter the outcome, at least it wasn't boring. The Syntherians arrived with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer to the face, which was about as pleasant as it sounded. Their ship docked with Euphrasia in a manner that suggested they'd either never heard of finesse or were actively allergic to it. The station shuddered under the impact, like an old drunk hit by a sobriety intervention. "They're here," Quillen said, staring at the monitor as if hoping it would suddenly display a "just kidding" message. "Guess they really want their toy back," Astrax replied, his tone as sour as the expression on his face. "Should we prepare a gift basket or something? Maybe throw in a 'sorry we touched your ancient alien relic' card," Quillen suggested. "Think they'd go for that, only if it's accompanied by an apology in blood." Astrax squinted at the readouts. "Their ship's big enough to house a small army, good. It's always nice to crash someone's party and find out they brought more guests than your life support can handle." Ree's voice came over the comms, as sharp and unyielding as always. "Quillen, Astrax, report to the airlock." "Let's try diplomacy before this turns into a brawl." "Diplomacy," Astrax muttered. "That'll be a first." Quillen gave him a grin that was more grimace than anything. "Hey, if they are hostile, maybe we'll learn some new insults." The two made their way to the airlock, the station's flickering lights doing little to soothe their nerves. They found Ree already there, her posture radiating the kind of confidence that usually preceded someone getting punched in the face. The airlock doors slid open with a grating screech, revealing the Syntherians. They looked every bit as alien as you'd expect from a species that thought finding their lost property was grounds for a home invasion. Tall, with skin that shimmered like oil on water, they moved with an unsettling kind of grace. There was something inherently unnerving about them, as if they were designed to remind you just how different they were. "Welcome to Euphrasia," Ree began, her diplomatic voice dialed up to 10. "I'm Captain Ree, and these are my officers, Quillen and Astrax." The lead Syntherian, a tall figure whose expression could best be described as constipated, looked at her like she'd just suggested they all sing campfire songs. "We are here for the artifact." "Yeah, about that," Quillen said, stepping forward. "We found it fair and square. You know, finders keepers." The Syntherian's eyes narrowed, which was quite the feat since they didn't really have visible eyelids. "It belongs to us." "It is not yours to keep, sure," Astrax said, "but in human culture, possession is 9/10 of the law." He paused, then added with a smirk, "The 10th is arguing about it." Ree shot them a look that could peel paint. "What my colleagues mean is that perhaps we can come to an understanding." "There is nothing to understand," the Syntherian replied, voice as cold as space itself. "Return the artifact or face the consequences." "Consequences?" Astrax echoed, his eyebrow doing a credible impression of a caterpillar trying to escape his forehead. "You mean like more paperwork?" Quillen cleared his throat. "Let's not antagonize the folks with the bigger guns, Astrax." The Syntherian leader tilted its head, a gesture that was either curious or homicidal, depending on how charitable you were feeling. "We do not wish violence, but we will retrieve what is ours." Ree held up a hand. "We didn't mean to activate it. We're just interested in its significance." "Could you explain?" The alien's silence stretched, the kind that made you question every life choice that led you to this airlock, facing down an alien species over a cosmic knickknack. "It is a key," the Syntherian finally said. "It opens the path to knowledge. Knowledge is power, right?" Quillen murmured to Astrax. "Usually means knowledge is the power to get us killed," Astrax replied. Ree sighed, the kind of sigh that suggested she was mentally drafting her resignation letter. "Look, maybe we can work together. We're not trying to steal your secrets." The Syntherian leader didn't look convinced. "Humans have a history of taking what is not theirs. Can't argue with that," Astrax said. "But we swear this time it's just curiosity, not colonization." Quillen felt a headache brewing. "We're not trying to hold on to it for any nefarious reasons. We just want to understand." The Syntherian's gaze shifted, calculating, as if considering the possibility of human honesty. "Understand this. The artifact is dangerous in the wrong hands." "Oh, we've gathered that," Quillen replied. "It's been trying to redecorate our station since we turned it on. Then you will deactivate it and return it to us." "Deactivate it." Astrax laughed, though it was a sound devoid of humor. You make it sound easy, like turning off a light switch. Can you do it? Ree asked, her eyes pinning Quillen with the kind of stare that suggested failure wasn't an option. Quillen shrugged, because what else could you do when faced with an alien ultimatum? I can try. But if it explodes, I'm not taking the blame. The Syntherian leader nodded, a slight concession that felt like winning an argument with a brick wall. You have one Ior, one Ior. Astrax snorted. Not demanding at all, are you? As the Syntherians withdrew, leaving the humans to their impending doom, Quillen turned to Ree. Guess we better get cracking. No pressure or anything, Astrax said, following him back to the console. Just the fate of the station hanging in the balance. Just another Tuesday, Quillen muttered. Okay, let's see what makes this thing tick. They returned to the central console, where the holographic display buzzed with alien symbols. The artifact's pulse felt almost smug now, as if it knew it held all the cards in this high-stakes game of cosmic poker. All right, let's figure this out, Quillen said, rolling up his sleeves like a man about to arm wrestle a bear. Astrax, keep an eye on the symbols. Maybe we can translate something useful, right? Astrax replied, focusing on the monitor. Let's hope this thing isn't just a glorified lava lamp. Quillen typed furiously, each keystroke a small act of defiance against the universe's cruel sense of humor. The symbols danced across the screen, mocking him with their inscrutability. Anything? Ree asked, pacing behind them like a caged tiger. Yeah, Quillen said. A splitting headache could be worse, Astrax added. Could be a migraine. Ree ignored their banter, her focus laser-sharp. What do you think this key is supposed to unlock? Something important, obviously, Quillen replied. Maybe a giant space vault, or Pandora's box. Let's hope it's not the second, Astrax said. We've got enough surprises. The station groaned again, the artifact's energy surging like a tidal wave. Quillen's fingers danced over the console, trying to keep up with the rapid-fire data spewing from the artifact. There. Astrax pointed at a series of symbols that flickered and then stabilized. That looked like anything to you. It looks like gibberish, Quillen admitted. But gibberish is a step up from nothing. Can you isolate it? I can try, Quillen said, switching tactics. Let's see if we can get this thing to shut up for a minute. The console whirred, the holographic display shifting as Quillen input commands. The artifact's energy fluctuated, its pulse becoming erratic as if protesting his every move. If this goes wrong, Astrax said, glancing at the alien ship visible through the viewport, I'm blaming you. Fair enough, Quillen replied, his focus unwavering. How much time do we have? 30 minutes, Ree said, checking her chronometer. No pressure, Quillen grunted, the pressure building like steam in a kettle. He tweaked the code, the artifact's internal systems struggling against his interventions. Any luck? Astrax asked, his voice tight with anticipation. Define luck, Quillen retorted, sweat beading on his forehead. Not dying would be my first choice, then fingers crossed. The console beeped suddenly, a high-pitched sound that made Quillen wince. The artifact symbols aligned, a pattern forming that was tantalizingly close to making sense. I think we've got something, Quillen said, his heart racing. It's like a puzzle. We just need to find the right pieces. And if it's a booby trap, Astrax asked. Then we're screwed either way, comforting. The station shivered again, a reminder of the ticking clock they were racing against. Quillen's fingers flew, desperate to crack the code before their time ran out. Almost there, he muttered, eyes glued to the display. Better hurry, Astrax said. Our guests don't look like the patient type. Ree joined them, her eyes scanning the display with fervent hope. Quillen, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Quillen replied, sarcasm dripping from his words. Remind me to update my resume after this, if there is an after. The console beeped again, a sound that was either a promise of success or a herald of doom. Quillen took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever came next. All right, he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Let's see what this baby can really do. With a final keystroke, Quillen executed the command, the artifact's energy surging in response. The station shuddered, the lights flickering as the console displayed a cascade of data. And then silence. Well, Astrax said, breaking the tension with his usual irreverence. That was either very good or very bad. Quillen stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. Let's find out. As they awaited the Syntherians' reaction, Quillen couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just unleashed something far beyond their understanding. But whatever it was, they were in it together, and for better or worse, they'd face the consequences as a team. Think they'll be satisfied? Astrax asked, watching the alien ship with a mixture of curiosity and dread. Doubt it, Quillen replied. But at least we're not bored. Ree nodded, her expression equal parts determination and resignation. Prepare for whatever comes next. And as the station braced for the unknown, Quillen couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, they'd survive long enough to grab those drinks he'd promised. The Euphrasia station groaned like an old man getting out of bed, the kind you were pretty sure was one stubbed toe away from the sweet release of death. Quillen glanced up from the console, wiping his hands on his pants, which were just as dirty as everything else on this creaky tin can. "We've got activity," Astrax announced, his usual smirk absent as he peered at the external sensors. "A whole lot of it. What kind of activity?" Quillen asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. "The kind involving large, angry ships that probably consider us a crunchy snack," Astrax said. "Looks like the Syntherians are done playing nice." "Great," Quillen muttered. "I always wanted to know what it felt like to be a fly in a zapper." Captain Ree stormed in, looking every bit like she was leading a one-woman charge into hell. "We're going into lockdown. Get ready for company. Astrax snorted. "I didn't clean the house." "Let's hope they don't notice the dust," Quillen added. Ree shot them both a look that could have melted through the hull. "This isn't a joke. Could have fooled me," Astrax replied, crossing his arms. "We've got Syntherians knocking at the door wanting their cosmic bauble back, and all we've got are bad jokes and a station held together with duct tape and prayer." "Well, start praying harder," Ree snapped. "We're locking down everything. Quillen, I need you by the artifact. If there's any way to use it to our advantage, we need to know now." "Sure thing, boss," Quillen said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "I'll just press the magic button that says solve all problems." Astrax chuckled darkly. "Hope it's got a don't die setting." As they hustled down the cramped corridors, the station's alarms blared, a sound that had long since lost its ability to induce panic, instead instilling a resigned sort of dread. Quillen wondered if they'd ever get a day where everything didn't feel like the universe's idea of a practical joke. Arriving at the artifact's containment room, Quillen took a breath and approached the console. "All right, you alien Rubik's Cube, show me what you've got." The artifact pulsed ominously, a heartbeat signaling nothing good. Quillen tapped a few keys, the holographic display flickering to life, a mess of indecipherable symbols filling the air. "What's the plan?" Astrax asked, leaning over his shoulder. Quillen shrugged. "No idea. Maybe I'll ask it nicely to blow up the Syntherian ship. Diplomacy's overrated anyway," Astrax said. "Screw it, go nuts." Rejoined them, her expression a mix of frustration and grim determination. "We've got minutes before they breach." "Any brilliant ideas?" "Brilliant," Quillen echoed. "Not exactly. But desperate, sure." "Desperation's the mother of invention," Astrax said. "Or was that necessity?" "Either way, close enough." Quillen's fingers flew over the console, calling up schematics and data streams, all while mentally cursing every decision that had led him to this precarious moment. If there was a way to leverage the artifact, he'd find it, or they'd all be toast. "Time's running out," Ree reminded him, her voice tight. "Yeah, I noticed," Quillen replied, not bothering to hide his irritation. "But unless you've got a plan to sweet-talk the Syntherians, this is our best shot." The artifact's glow intensified, casting eerie shadows across their faces. Quillen felt a chill crawl down his spine, like someone had dumped ice water in his veins. The damn thing felt alive, and not in a way that suggested it wanted to help. "Maybe it's a peace offering," Astrax suggested, though the look on his face said he didn't believe it. "Or maybe it's a bomb," Ree muttered. "Can we trust it?" Trust isn't exactly in my vocabulary right now, Quillen said. But we don't have much choice. The station shuddered again and the lights dimmed before flickering back on. Quillen swore under his breath, his frustration mounting. He isolated another batch of symbols, trying to unravel their meaning. Look at this, Astrax said, pointing to a sequence that seemed to form a pattern. Could be a command. Quillen stared at it, weighing the risks. Or it could be a self-destruct code. Refolded her arms. We can't just sit here doing nothing. Never said we were, Quillen shot back. But rushing in blind ain't gonna do us any good. 30 seconds, Astrax said, checking his chronometer. Hope you've got a miracle in your back pocket. Working on it, Quillen replied, though his confidence was threadbare at best. He hesitated a beat, then took the plunge, entering the command into the console. The artifact responded instantly, its energy output spiking, the display flaring as alien characters scrolled across it in a dizzying cascade. Something's happening, Quillen said, his voice unsteady. Good something or bad something? Astrax asked. We'll find out soon enough, Quillen replied, casting a quick glance at Ree. Her expression was stoic, but he could see the tension in her jaw. The station's systems hummed, the artifact thrumming in resonance. Quillen held his breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop, and drop it did. The Syntherian's ship fired, a barrage of energy slamming into Euphrasia's shields. The station rocked violently, and for a moment Quillen was airborne, a testament to the joys of artificial gravity having a hiccup. Shields holding, Ree announced, though her voice was strained. Barely. Let's hope this thing's doing more than just putting on a light show, Astrax said, bracing himself against the console. Quillen watched the display, his heart pounding as the artifact's energy pulsed outwards, a wave of power sweeping through the station. The lights flickered again, but this time, there was a sense of purpose, as if the artifact was reaching out, touching every system with invisible fingers. Feels like something's happening, Astrax noted, his tone cautiously optimistic. Either it's working or we're about to be vaporized, Quillen replied. The Syntherian's ship fired again, but this time the impact was lessened, the station's shields absorbing the brunt of the attack. A hopeful sign, but not one to hang your survival on just yet. Ree, Quillen said, drawing her attention. I think it's reinforcing us, think or no? Ree asked, her voice laced with urgency. Semantics at this point, he replied, but I'm leaning towards no. Astrax glanced at the external sensors. Syntherians are holding position, like they're waiting for something. Maybe they're waiting for us to screw up, Ree suggested. Wouldn't be the first time, Quillen muttered. The station's systems hummed, a symphony of technology and alien energy intertwining in a precarious dance. Quillen could feel the pressure lifting, the artifact's power bolstering their defenses, at least for now. All right, Astrax said, slapping Quillen on the back. Not bad for a couple of monkeys fiddling with alien tech. Flattery will get you everywhere, Quillen replied, though his focus remained on the console. Let's not celebrate yet, Ree cautioned. We're still in the thick of it, Quillen nodded, the weight of the situation heavy on his shoulders. We bought some time. Now we need to figure out our next move. Negotiations still on the table, Ree said, though her tone suggested she wasn't thrilled at the prospect. And if they're not interested? Astrax asked. Then we'll have to improvise, Ree replied. Quillen sighed, the irony not lost on him. Famous last words. As the station settled into a tense standoff, Quillen's mind raced. They'd staved off disaster, at least for the moment, but the clock was ticking and the Syntherian's patience was running thin. Think we can reason with them? Astrax asked, his skepticism clear. Worth a shot, Ree said. If we can't broker peace, we can at least stall them. Quillen leaned against the console, the weight of their predicament pressing down on him. Let's hope they are in a chatty mood. As the crew regrouped, Quillen couldn't shake the feeling that they were teetering on a razor's edge. Their survival was a precarious balancing act, but with any luck, they'd find a way through it. Prepare a comm link, Ree ordered, steeling herself for the conversation to come. Let's see if we can talk them down. Astrax nodded, setting up the necessary systems. Here goes nothing. Quillen watched as the link opened, the Syntherian leader's face appearing on the display, its expression unreadable. "This is Captain Ree of the Euphrasia Station," Ree began, her voice firm but diplomatic. "We'd like to propose a ceasefire to discuss terms." The Syntherian regarded her coolly, its eyes like black holes, absorbing everything and revealing nothing. "There is nothing to discuss. Return the artifact. Look, we're not trying to keep it," Ree said, her tone placating. "But we need assurance that you won't destroy us the moment we lower our defenses." Quillen watched the exchange, feeling like a spectator at a high-stakes poker game. One wrong move and they'd all be toast. "Our patience is limited," the Syntherian replied, its voice as cold as the void. "And your time is running out." Ree didn't flinch. "We're willing to negotiate, but we need your cooperation. Let's find a solution that works for both parties." The Syntherian leader was silent, its gaze calculating, as if weighing the odds before responding. "We will consider your offer. But know this, our tolerance for human duplicity is minimal." "Understood," Ree said, her expression unwavering. "We'll be standing by." As the comm link closed, the tension in the room was palpable. Quillen let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, the air thick with uncertainty. "Think they'll play ball?" Astrax asked, breaking the silence. "Hard to say," Ree replied, her shoulders sagging slightly. "But we've got to keep trying." Quillen nodded, the reality of their precarious situation settling in. They'd bought themselves a reprieve, but the stakes were higher than ever, and the next move was crucial. "Guess we wait," Quillen said, the words bitter on his tongue. "Not much else we can do." As they prepared for whatever came next, Quillen couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way out of this mess. It was a long shot, but in a universe that seemed hell-bent on crushing them, sometimes all you had was the hope of a miracle. And if not, at least they'd go down swinging. The Euphrasia shuddered again, its aging hull groaning like a pensioner with a bad hip. Quillen could almost hear the duct tape straining under the pressure of the Syntherian assault. "Well, this is a barrel of laughs," he muttered, fingers flying over the console, eyes glued to the holographic display that fizzled and flickered like an asthmatic firefly. Astrax stood nearby, leaning casually against a bulkhead as if they weren't one wrong move away from being space debris. "On the bright side, the shields are still holding," he said with a smirk that suggested he found the whole situation more amusing than alarming. "For now." Quillen shot him a sideways glance. "Yeah, like a wet paper bag holding back a tidal wave." "How comforting." Captain Ree stalked over, her expression a storm cloud of determination and frustration. "What's the status, Quillen? Are we any closer to figuring out what that alien juju is supposed to do?" "Close as a cow to calculus," Quillen replied, his eyes scanning the alien symbols that scrolled across the screen. The artifact pulsed with an unsettling energy, its intentions as clear as mud. "But I've got a hunch," he added, not sounding particularly thrilled about it. "A hunch," Astrax echoed, eyebrow quirked. "That's what we're betting our lives on." "Got any better ideas?" Quillen shot back. "Because unless you've got a magic wand hidden somewhere, this hunch is all we've got." Ree folded her arms, her eyes narrowing. "What's your gut telling you?" "That this thing could either save us or turn us into a cautionary tale," Quillen said, his voice a dry rasp of sarcasm. "I'm poking and prodding, but it's like trying to decipher a cat's diary. Optimism is your strong suit, huh?" Astrax chuckled, though his eyes held a flicker of genuine concern. Quillen just shrugged. "It's not pessimism if the odds really are that bad." The station rattled again, and the lights dimmed before reluctantly sputtering back to life. Quillen's nerves were frayed, his patience thinner than the air outside the hull. He glanced at Ree, who was watching him with the kind of intensity usually reserved for hostage negotiations. "There's something else," Quillen said, hesitating. "I think there's a hidden function in the artifact." "Something major, define major," Ree demanded, her voice a hard edge of authority. "Major as in game-changer or catastrophic failure," Quillen replied, offering a half-hearted smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's a gamble." The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Astrax whistled quietly. So we're playing intergalactic roulette now. Fantastic. Ree's gaze was a steel trap. Can you control it? Quillen grimaced. Control's a strong word. Best I can do is nudge it and pray it doesn't blow us to kingdom come. Or, as we say in the business, standard operating procedure, Astrax quipped, his grin as crooked as the odds they were facing. Ree turned to her crew, eyes scanning each one with the weight of command. We're out of options. We either roll the dice with this thing or watch the Syntherians turn us into a cosmic pancake. Good to see we've got choices, Quillen muttered, feeling the pressure of decision-making settle like lead in his gut. As they debated, the station's alarm shrieked again, a harsh reminder that the Syntherians were less patient than a caffeinated gnat. Defensive perimeter breached, Astrax announced, his tone lacking the usual mirth. They're coming in hot. Great, Quillen said, injecting a dose of gallows humor into his voice. The welcome wagon's here and we're fresh out of party favors, Astrax snorted. You're the party favor, he said, a sardonic glint in his eye. Better start dancing. Quillen focused back on the artifact, steeling himself for what was to come. The alien symbols beckoned, taunting him with the possibility of salvation or destruction. All right, he said finally. Time to see if this thing is friend or foe. Ree nodded, a silent command to proceed. Quillen took a deep breath, his fingers poised over the console. His mind raced with possibilities, each one more dire than the last. Here goes nothing, he murmured, and initiated the sequence. The artifact's glow intensified, bathing the room in an unearthly light that seemed to vibrate with a life of its own. Quillen felt a jolt, as if the station itself had come alive, every system thrumming in concert with the alien tech. Something's definitely happening, Astrax said, his voice tinged with awe. But what? Quillen's eyes remained glued to the display, monitoring the data streams with laser focus. The artifact's power surged, coursing through the station like a torrent, touching every system, altering the very fabric of their reality. This is either really good, or we're about to have a very bad day, Quillen said, a wry smile tugging at his lips despite the circumstances. The Syntherians unleashed another volley, but this time the station's shields absorbed it with a resilience that defied logic. Quillen watched in disbelief as the artifact seemed to bolster their defenses, its energy weaving an invisible net of protection around them. Well, I'll be damned, Astrax said, watching the display with wide eyes. It's working. For now, Quillen cautioned, though he couldn't deny the flicker of hope sparking in his chest. Ree's expression softened, if only for a moment. Keep it up, Quillen. We might just survive this after all. Don't count your chickens, he warned, but there was something else in his tone now, something close to optimism, even if it was laced with cynicism. The Syntherian ship loomed outside, a menacing shadow against the backdrop of stars. Quillen knew they were far from out of the woods. The artifact was a temporary reprieve, a stopgap measure in a long and deadly game. We need a permanent solution, Ree said, echoing his thoughts. Something that'll get them off our backs for good, and what do you propose? Astrax asked, his tone light but his eyes serious. Diplomacy's still on the table, Ree replied, but we need more leverage. Quillen's mind churned, considering their precarious situation. The artifact was a double-edged sword, a potential savior or a terrifying weapon. His conscience warred with practicality, each side making compelling arguments. We could use the artifact as a bargaining chip, he suggested. Convince them we're capable of wiping them out if they don't back off. Bluffing with a hand we've barely got, Astrax mused. Risky, but it could work. Ree considered his words, her face a mask of contemplation. Or it could backfire spectacularly and end with us all in pieces. Life's a series of risks, Quillen said, his voice quieter now. It's just a matter of which ones you're willing to take. The station hummed around them, the artifact's power a palpable presence that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. Quillen knew they were walking a razor's edge, teetering between survival and annihilation. We can't use it as a weapon, Ree said finally, her voice firm. Not unless we have no other choice. We're better than that, are we? Astrax challenged, though his tone was more questioning than confrontational. Hopefully, Ree replied, her eyes reflecting the weight of leadership, but we'll hold it in reserve. Last resort. Quillen nodded, the decision a heavy burden but one he was willing to bear. All right, we'll play it your way. But if push comes to shove, we'll deal with it then, Ree said, cutting him off. For now, we focus on keeping this station in one piece. Astrax turned back to his console, scanning the incoming data. Syntherians are still holding position. Maybe they're having second thoughts, or waiting for us to make a mistake, Quillen said, his cynicism surfacing once more. Either way, we're on borrowed time. The station's systems hummed with alien energy, a precarious balance that could tip in either direction. As they prepared for the next phase of their desperate gamble, Quillen couldn't help but reflect on the irony of their situation. Here they were, in the vast emptiness of space, clinging to life on a piece of junk held together by hope and stubbornness. Facing an enemy that was more advanced, more powerful, and certainly more annoyed. But if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was defying the odds. Maybe they'd pull off a miracle, or maybe they'd just go down fighting. Either way, Quillen figured they'd make a damn good story out of it. And in the grim darkness of space, sometimes that was enough. Quillen stared at the holographic display like it owed him money. The alien symbols danced mockingly, promising either a miracle or a disaster, maybe both. He'd gotten used to the feeling of imminent doom since signing up for this gig. But right now, he felt particularly aware of just how much this job sucked. Astrax lounged against the bulkhead, arms crossed and smirk firmly in place. So, are we all set to bluff a civilization that probably reads minds over breakfast? Quillen snorted. Oh, absolutely. I've got a degree in bullshitting from the University of Desperation. Summa cum laude, no less. In the background, the Euphrasia's systems hummed along in their usual symphony of barely contained chaos. The place was a museum piece, each creak and groan a reminder that it had seen better days. Much like its crew. Let's pretend for a second that your hunch actually pans out, Astrax mused, his voice dripping with skepticism. What's the plan? Quillen drew a deep breath, his fingers dancing over the console keys with the kind of reckless abandon one usually reserved for karaoke night. We're gonna make them think we've got a big stick, bigger than theirs anyway. Astrax chuckled, a low, dry sound. And if they call our bluff, then we'll just have to hope they're as scared of faking it till you make it as we are, Quillen replied, flashing a grin that was all teeth and no reassurance. Captain Ree's voice crackled over the intercom, a no-nonsense drawl that demanded attention. Quillen, Astrax, status update now. Quillen clicked the comms button, trying to keep the nerves out of his voice. We're about to engage in some high-stakes poker, Captain. Let's hope the Syntherians aren't the type to raise. A pause, then Ree's voice, calm and steady, the voice of someone who'd seen this dance too many times. Make it work, boys. We're out of time and luck. Astrax pushed off the bulkhead, moving to check the external sensors. Syntherians are still out there, sitting pretty. They've probably got the champagne on ice, waiting for us to screw up. Quillen leaned back, eyes locked on the whirling symbols. All right, time to light this candle. He tapped a series of commands into the console, each keystroke a throw of the dice. The artifact's glow intensified, casting an eerie luminescence over the cramped control room. The energy pulsed, rhythmic and insistent, like a heartbeat that wasn't quite human. Okay, Quillen muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. Let's open up a line of communication and hope they are in a chatty mood. Astrax snorted. Because nothing screams welcome like a hostage situation. The comm system crackled as Quillen put in a request to hail the Syntherians. Static hissed, then a voice, cold and precise, cut through the noise. Human vessel Euphrasia, state your intentions. Quillen glanced at Astrax, then back at the console. We've got your relic, he said, voice steady. And a proposal. A proposal. The Syntherian's tone was skeptical, laced with the kind of disdain usually reserved for telemarketers or reality TV show hosts. Yeah, Quillen replied, forcing confidence he didn't feel. We're willing to discuss terms, could be beneficial for both sides. Astrax shook his head in disbelief, mouthing, benefits my ass. The Syntherian paused, considering. And why should we negotiate with you? Quillen took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of bravado. Because this little trinket of yours isn't just a paperweight. It's powering up our systems and could do a hell of a lot more. Silence stretched over the comm, thick and heavy. Quillen could practically feel the Syntherian's gears turning, weighing the odds. If you're bluffing, human, the voice began, but Quillen cut him off. Then call it, he snapped, banking on the gamble that the Syntherians didn't know everything about their own tech. Your move, rejoined them, her presence a calming force even if her expression was nothing short of thunderous. Risky gambit, Quillen, she said quietly, her voice a mixture of admiration and frustration. But it might just work. Or it might get us blown to bits, Astrax added helpfully, ever the optimist. The comms flared to life once more. We will consider your offer, the Syntherian finally said, each word clipped and grudging. Stand by. Quillen leaned back in his seat, exhaling loudly. Well, they haven't vaporized us yet. I'd call that a win. Ree nodded, though her eyes remained focused on the console. Let's hope they are in a reasonable mood. Reasonable, Astrax echoed, making it sound like the dirtiest word in the universe. In a universe that makes sense, sure. Quillen couldn't help but chuckle. Yeah, because that's what we're all about here, making sense. The station shuddered again, the artifact's energy still enveloping them in a protective cocoon. For now, they were safe enough to try and broker some kind of peace, a temporary pause in the hostilities. But Quillen knew better than to trust that feeling. Keep an eye on those systems, Ree instructed. We can't let up for a second. Astrax gave a little salute. Roger that, Captain. I'll make sure the duct tape holds. Quillen stood, stretching muscles tense from too many Iors hunched over screens. We should prep for the worst, he said. Whatever talks we have won't mean squat if they decide we're more trouble than we're worth. Agreed, Ree said, her mind already working through scenarios. But if we're lucky, maybe they'll see reason. Luck, Astrax scoffed. Haven't seen much of that lately. Quillen turned back to the artifact, its glow a constant reminder of their precarious position. He knew they were playing with fire, but at this point they'd run out of other options. How's it looking? Ree asked, her gaze unyielding. Stable for now, Quillen replied, fingers brushing the console as if the action might somehow translate into reassurance. But we're pushing it. Every second counts. Astrax resumed his post at the sensors, eyes scanning the readouts. They're holding position, Captain. Either they're scared of what we might do or they're just waiting for us to trip over our own feet. Ree crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. Let them wait. The longer we can keep this up, the better our chances. Quillen felt a pang of something approaching hope, which was dangerous in itself. But it was hard not to feel just a little bit optimistic with the artifact thrumming away at their command. Remember, Ree said, her voice a steady anchor against the chaos. We're still in control here. As long as we keep our heads, we might just pull this off. You're always so inspiring, Astrax drawled, though he couldn't quite hide the hint of respect in his voice. Quillen grinned despite himself. Yeah, it's almost enough to make you believe in miracles, right? The intercom buzzed, the Syntherians back on the line. Human vessel Euphrasia, we have considered your offer. Quillen's heart skipped a beat, his fingers hovering over the console. And we are willing to negotiate. Relief washed through the control room, though no one dared to show it. Not yet. They were far from safe, but they'd bought themselves a sliver of time, a rare commodity in the business of survival. Open the channel, Ree instructed, her voice steady as iron. Let's see what we're dealing with. Quillen obeyed, the lines of communication crackling to life. A standoff, yes, but one with words rather than weapons. At least for the moment. Syntherian representative, this is Captain Ree of the Euphrasia, she began, her tone a masterclass in diplomacy. We appreciate your willingness to discuss terms. We wish only to retrieve our property without further conflict, the Syntherian replied, and Quillen swore he could hear the disdain dripping from each syllable. But know this, human, we do not take kindly to threats. Neither do we, Ree returned, steel in her voice. "But we're not interested in threats. Just in finding a way to make this end without more bloodshed." There was a pause, the kind that stretched too long and made Quillen's skin itch. He could almost feel the weight of the Syntherian's decision, hanging precariously in the balance. Finally, the alien spoke again, a grudging concession. "We will hear your terms." Quillen exchanged a glance with Astrax, a silent acknowledgement of the stakes. This was their chance, they couldn't afford to miss it. "Well, this should be fun," Astrax murmured, sarcasm lacing his words. Quillen just nodded, his mind a whirl of possibilities. "Let's hope they're feeling generous." Ree straightened, her focus unwavering as she prepared to negotiate with an alien species that could easily wipe them from existence. But if there was one thing Quillen had learned in his time aboard the Euphrasia, it was that humans had a knack for surviving against the odds. "We propose a trade," Ree said, her voice firm. "Your artifact in exchange for safe passage and assurances of peace." Astrax grimaced, his skepticism palpable. "Think they'll buy it?" Quillen shrugged, the gesture encompassing all their uncertainties. "Guess we're about to find out." The Syntherian considered, the pause stretching long enough to fray Quillen's nerves. But finally the alien spoke, a reluctant nod to diplomacy. "We will consider your proposal." Ree inclined her head, a gesture of respect even if her eyes remained sharp. "Take your time. We're not going anywhere." The comms fell silent, leaving the crew in a tense waiting game, the air thick with anticipation and the faint hum of the artifact. "Well," Astrax said, breaking the silence with his usual sardonic flair. "Guess we'll just sit here and hope they don't decide we're expendable." Quillen chuckled, though it was a sound born more of stress than humor. "Yeah, nothing like a bit of nail-biting suspense to liven up the day." Ree turned to her crew, her expression a mask of determination. "Stay sharp. We're not out of the woods yet." Quillen nodded, his eyes flicking back to the console. The artifact continued its steady glow, a beacon of potential that seemed to pulse in time with their hopes and fears. "We'll get through this," Ree said, her voice quiet but filled with a certainty that defied the odds. "We have to, or we'll go down in a blaze of glory," Astrax added, his grin crooked but genuine. Quillen couldn't help but smile, the camaraderie a balm against the uncertainty. Either way, it'll be one hell of a story. And in the grim darkness of space, that was sometimes the best you could hope for. Quillen drummed his fingers against the console, nerves jittering like a caffeinated squirt. "So," he said, breaking the silence before it could stretch into awkwardness and lead to existential dread. "Negotiate with an alien species, check. Now we just need to not screw it up." Astrax snorted, arms crossed as he leaned against the bulkhead. "Piece of cake." "Like that time you fixed the air filtration by kicking it." Quillen shot him a sidelong glance. "Hey, that worked, for about 5 minutes anyway. Until it nearly killed us with the smell of burning circuits," Astrax pointed out. "A masterpiece of incompetence if I've ever seen one." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Quillen replied dryly. "Nice to know I can always count on you." Ree entered, her expression a tightrope walk between determination and the kind of frustration that made one want to strangle something. "What's the status, gentlemen?" she asked, though the edge in her voice suggested there were no gentlemen present. "Syntherians are considering our offer," Quillen said. "Or they're just debating whether to bake us or broil us." Ree nodded, her eyes narrowing as if she could pierce the Syntherian ship with sheer willpower. "We need to keep them on the hook, keep them talking. The longer they hesitate, the more likely they are to realize we're not just walking target practice." Quillen leaned back in his chair, contemplating the artifact with a weary curiosity. "You think they realize what this thing can do?" Astrax raised an eyebrow. "You mean aside from glowing like a Christmas tree and giving us all existential crises?" "No," Ree interjected, voice carrying the weight of authority. "But they know enough to want it back, and that's our leverage." "Leverage," Astrax repeated, rolling the word around like a mouthful of spoiled wine. "Because nothing says peaceful negotiation like a potential interstellar incident." Quillen chuckled, though it sounded more like a cough. Isn't that how all great friendships start? Ree glanced at him, her expression softening just a touch. We're not aiming for lifelong buddies here, just a temporary ceasefire. Maybe a signed napkin saying we won't vaporize you. Sounds about right, Astrax agreed before turning his attention back to the sensors. Still holding position. Either they're scared of us or they're just biding their time to see if we implode first. Quillen sighed, his gaze drifting back to the console. Guess all we can do is wait. And maybe pray to whatever gods still have a sense of humor. Ree smirked at that, a fleeting expression that was gone as quickly as it came. If they have a sense of humor, we're screwed. Quillen opened his mouth to reply, but the calm crackled to life, interrupting him with all the subtlety of a marching band in a library. Human vessel Euphrasia, the Syntherian voice announced, still as frigid and unfriendly as a tax audit. We have considered your proposal, and, reprompted, her tone as neutral as a politician's promise. We acknowledge your terms, the alien continued, words clipped. We will not engage in hostilities so long as the artifact remains undisturbed. Quillen blinked, surprise rippling through him like a stone dropped into a pond. Well, I'll be damned, he muttered. They actually bit. Of course they did, Astrax said, though his grin was more relieved than smug. Hard to resist when we're this charming. Ree nodded, her relief palpable though she masked it with pragmatism. Open a channel, she instructed. Let's seal this deal before they change their minds. Quillen obliged, activating the comm system once more. Syntherian representative, Ree began, her voice the epitome of diplomatic poise. We agree to your terms. The artifact will remain undisturbed and in our custody until safe passage is assured. Agreed, came the curt reply. And know this, Captain Ree, should you deviate from this agreement, we will not hesitate to retaliate. Fair enough, Ree said, her expression unyielding. We have no interest in escalations. The comms went silent after that, the kind of silence that felt both heavy with relief and taut with the knowledge that one misstep could unravel everything. But for now, they had something resembling peace. Well, that was almost anticlimactic, Astrax remarked, though his eyes betrayed his own surprise. Quillen let out a slow breath, feeling the tension in the room ebb just a little. What now? He asked, glancing at Ree. Now, Ree said, we sit tight, keep an eye on our systems, and hope the Syntherians don't have a sudden change of heart. And if they do, Astrax asked, ever the voice of practicality. Then we deal with it, Ree replied, with a calm that belied the gravity of their situation. Quillen watched the glow of the artifact, feeling oddly comforted by its presence even if it was the root of their current predicament. It thrummed with untapped potential, a reminder of the line they walked between disaster and salvation. Feels like we dodged a bullet, Astrax said, breaking the introspective silence. For now, anyway, Quillen agreed. But let's not get too cozy. I'm pretty sure the universe has more bullets with our name on them. Optimism at its finest, Astrax quipped, though there was a note of camaraderie in his voice. Ree stood, her expression unreadable but for the faintest hint of satisfaction. Good work, both of you. We're not out of the woods yet, but this is a step in the right direction. Agreed, Quillen said, feeling a flicker of something that might have been hope. Or maybe gas. It was hard to tell these days. Astrax grinned, the kind of grin that suggested he'd just gotten away with something. Guess we're not quite as expendable as we thought. Quillen smiled despite himself. Here's to being troublemakers. And maybe, just maybe, they had a chance, however slim it might be. In the grim darkness of space, that was good enough for now. Quillen leaned back in his chair, letting the silence settle like a dusting of cosmic debris. He rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar throb of stress mingling with the unexpected relief that they hadn't been obliterated into space dust. I can't believe they actually agreed, he muttered, mostly to himself. Astrax, still leaning against the bulkhead with the kind of casual slouch that suggested he was one with the ship, chuckled dryly. It's not every day you bluff your way into an interstellar ceasefire. I'm almost impressed. Almost. Quillen raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Well, I'd be more impressed if we'd managed it without nearly getting ourselves spaced, Astrax retorted, a smirk tugging at his lips. As it stands, I'm just relieved. Ree glanced between them, her expression a blend of bemusement and the same brand of disbelief that had become their constant companion. Let's not pop the champagne just yet, she advised, her voice a grounding force amidst their weary levity. We still have a station that's one loose bolt away from disintegration, and an artifact that might as well be labeled "Do Not Touch." Quillen snorted. Touching things never ends well for me anyway. You've got a real talent for understatement, Quillen, Astrax quipped, crossing his arms. What's next, a master class in saying things like "oops and my bad"? Only if you're offering to co-host, Quillen shot back with a grin, feeling the tension ease just a notch. For the first time in what felt like forever, they weren't staring down certain doom, just highly probable doom. Ree tapped a finger against the console, her eyes narrowing in thought. We can't rest on our laurels. We need to repair this tin can and figure out what the hell this artifact actually does. Because if the Syntherians are interested, it's bound to be more than just a glorified nightlight. Quillen nodded, eyeing the artifact's steady glow with something approaching respect. Maybe it's a cosmic bug zapper. We could use one of those. Right. Because if there's one thing the universe needs, it's fewer bugs, Astrax said, deadpan. Or fewer humans, depending on who you ask, Quillen countered, shrugging. But here we are still kicking. And kicking's what we're good at, Ree added, her tone wry but affectionate. Now let's focus on keeping this station operational. Quillen, you're on life support systems again, and this time try not to fix it by kicking things. Hey, that's part of my charm, Quillen protested with mock indignation. But fine, I'll try to use my indoor maintenance skills, Astrax chuckled. I've seen your indoor maintenance skills, and they're about as subtle as a freight train through a china shop. Everyone's a critic, Quillen sighed, pushing himself up from his chair. All right, I'll see what I can do. Try not to break anything while I'm gone. He left the command center with Astrax's laughter trailing after him, a sound that somehow managed to be both comforting and mildly insulting. But that was Astrax for you, always cracking jokes, even when they were barreling toward oblivion. The corridors of the Euphrasia were as familiar to Quillen as the lines on his palms, though they seemed a little less claustrophobic now that the immediate threat of Syntherian annihilation had been delayed. He made his way to the maintenance bay, the hum of the life support systems growing louder with each step. The control panel loomed before him, all blinking lights and the faint smell of overheating circuits. It was a miracle the thing hadn't shorted out completely. The station was a patchwork quilt of repairs and jury-rigged solutions, a testament to human tenacity and desperation. Okay, let's see what you've got for me today, Quillen muttered, rolling up his sleeves. The panel blinked innocuously, as if daring him to make things worse. It was a challenge he accepted with the grim determination of a man who'd been electrocuted one too many times. He reached for his toolkit, fingers brushing against the worn grips of his pliers, a screwdriver, and a roll of duct tape that had seen more action than most soldiers. Quillen had the sneaking suspicion that the universe had a special place in its heart for duct tape, and he was determined to find out just how far it could take him. As he worked, coaxing the finicky systems back into something resembling operational, his mind wandered back to the Syntherians. They were out there, probably watching, waiting to see if the humans would screw up or surprise them once again. The thought was oddly comforting. Nothing like the pressure of interstellar scrutiny to keep you on your toes. The life support system whirred back to life with a reluctant groan, like an old dog being asked to fetch one more time. Quillen watched the readout stabilize, relief settling over him like a well-worn jacket. Not too shabby, he said to himself, giving the panel a satisfied pat. You've got a few more miles in you yet. It was then the comm crackled to life, startling him enough that he nearly dropped his screwdriver. Quillen, stop flirting with the machinery and get back to the command center, Ree's voice instructed, a note of amusement threading through the order. "On my way," he replied, gathering his tools and making a mental note to thank the gods of maintenance for small mercies. At least today, the universe hadn't decided to make an example of him. Back in the command center, the atmosphere was noticeably lighter. Ree was leaning over the console, speaking to a holographic projection of a Syntherian representative, an image that flickered with the uncertain stability of an old television trying to catch a signal. "Collaboration would benefit both our species," Ree was saying, her tone the epitome of diplomatic grace. "Shared knowledge of the artifact's potential could lead to significant advancements for both parties." The Syntherian's expression was inscrutable, a mask of alien features that could have been carved from stone. "Your proposal is acceptable," it said, each word dragging over the line between grudging and curious. "Excellent," Ree replied, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "We'll arrange for joint research teams to meet aboard the Euphrasia, or what's left of it." Quillen stepped up beside Astrax, who was watching the exchange with the air of a man witnessing history being made and wondering when the other shoe would drop. "Did I miss anything world-shattering?" Quillen asked, keeping his voice low. "Just the birth of an unlikely alliance," Astrax said, his tone light but his eyes serious. "No big deal. Guess that means we've got to play nice with the aliens," Quillen mused, scratching his chin. "Or at least pretend to," Astrax agreed, grinning. "Think of it as a team-building exercise, with potential laser beams involved." Quillen chuckled, the sound blending with the hum of the station's systems. For the first time in a long while, the chaos seemed manageable. Even the artifact, with its enigmatic glow, felt less like a ticking time bomb and more like a puzzle, a challenge to be met with curiosity and ingenuity. As the details of their unlikely partnership were hashed out, Quillen found himself reflecting on the strange twists of fate that had brought them to this point. Their survival had hinged on a combination of luck, audacity, and the simple fact that everyone involved had something to gain by not blowing each other out of the sky. In the vast, indifferent expanse of space, that was enough to forge a connection. For now, at least. Ree ended the transmission, turning to face her crew with a smile that was equal parts relief and triumph. "Looks like we've got some new allies," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of their shared victory, "and a hell of a lot of work ahead." Astrax gave a mock salute, his grin infectious. "Here's to not dying today," he toasted, imaginary glass in hand. Quillen raised an invisible cup of his own, echoing the sentiment. "And maybe even learning something along the way." Ree nodded, her gaze sweeping over the control room with pride. "Let's get to work then. We've got a station to salvage and a future to build." As they turned back to their tasks, Quillen couldn't help but feel a swell of something dangerously close to optimism. After all, they'd faced down death and come out the other side with allies, knowledge, and just a smidgen of hope. In the grim darkness of space, sometimes that was enough.